I've been asking some of the other coaches about going freshman versus transfer, and I know we've talked about that a little bit and some of the philosophies that go into that. How much has that, or I guess your decision to kind of really go all in on that, like what kind of coaching adjustments does that require? What kind of patience does that require when you're building a roster, knowing that you are going a little bit of a younger route?
Yeah, I think I'll have a lot better feel. I've not been in a situation where we've had to rely on this number of freshmen to play the kind of minutes we're going to expect them and the kind of roles. So I do think in some ways, Adam, it's going to be a learning experience for me just to see, okay, at this level, they're talented kids, but how quickly can they impact our team at the level we need them to versus a ready-made guy. I think I have a good feel that, perhaps your ceiling as they get adjusted to college basketball is higher than a transfer. I think we all could make that assumption, and usually that's true. But how quickly they can get there and how that actually impacts a team trying to compete at a high level is something that I'll need to learn. I do think there's going to be patience required that I'll need. That it'll be an exercise for me. It's something I can definitely get better.
Is an E.J. Liddell like the ultimate example of learning through some things early on and really blossoming into an all-time player?
Yeah, I think he was. I'd share the experience a lot that he came to me after Wisconsin at home, I believe February of his freshman year, because we couldn't play him. Wisconsin was playing like Wisconsin plays, physical and aggressive, and he just wasn't quite ready for that. And we had an honest conversation. He never ducked it. He accepted responsibility. So did the people around him. And he went on a tear, and it was a great example. And then he came back and was first-team All-League as a sophomore and first-team All-League as a junior. So he is a great example of what you hope. But there's a mindset for him, and there's a mindset from the people around him that I think are required for a kid like that to come out on the other end, because he certainly could have questioned a number of things, and he just accepted responsibility and moved on.
I know you want to have these freshmen in for multiple years, right? You want to be able to kind of build a long-term plan, right? You're recruiting 23
Yes.
right now based on who you have in 22 and like what you're able to build with. But naturally, I guess, it's your last year with Malachi. Maybe you didn't expect Malachi to get to where he did as fast as he did. How do you navigate year over year versus a long-term vision in this day and age?
I don't know that we'd be recruiting like we have been necessarily without the success of Malachi and EJ. You have two different paths to any player's dream, which is the NBA. You have Malachi. As I've said before, there were going to be questions when you're that coach at Ohio State if you've not had a first rounder in a couple years. That's going to be a question that's going to come up in recruiting. Obviously, we would have loved to coach Malachi another year, but there's real benefits to his experience. And most importantly, there's benefit to the young man. He's getting to live a dream as the 20th pick in a great organization. But I think those are always difficult conversations. But as I've said, I texted Gene Smith after our Indiana game at home and said, I think he's probably going to move on. He's that good right now, and that was a good thing for him.
Is that where the portal kind of comes in your long-term vision? Like, okay, we lose Malachi maybe a little bit unexpectedly based on where we were in November. But okay, we can go get Sean McNeil or Tanner Holt. Is that how you see it in the kind of logical progression?
I think that's how we'll utilize it at Ohio State. That's how I'd like to utilize it at Ohio State, is maybe to plug a gap where you do have an unexpected situation like Malachi leaving. Maybe while we were thinking 2 years or maybe 3 years, it's just 1 year. I think the transfer portal is invaluable. And Sean's going to be ready to help us because he's played 4 years of college basketball, and he's been coached in a great program at West Virginia, so he'll be able to help us immediately.
Coach, will Zed actually have a green light to take a couple threes every game, or is that something he still kind of has to show, or is that something he's just like kind of seeing if it's there at all in practice, kind of in the preseason?
Well, based on his performance on Buckeyes on the blacktop, that might call into question me giving him the freedom. He has shot it, I would say, I don't have his exact percentages up to date, but he's shot it at above a 32-33% clip in all of our live action right now. He needs a little bit of time, but he is going to have freedom to shoot some threes for sure. There's no question. I think for him, he's got to be able to expand his game. He's really worked at it. All the numbers that we chart throughout the season and all the summer and all the shooting drills suggest that he's going to be able to make threes, and I really believe he will.
Is Zed and Felix's maybe inability to play on the court together this year kind of more to do with next year having another guy you can rotate in, or does that have to do with maybe Zed rounding out his skill set on the perimeter a little bit as well to be able
For
to play
next
those
year?
guys? Yeah, just the difference between the other day you were saying that this year you might not be able to see Felix and Zed paired together on the court at the same time versus next year maybe with another big you could do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we did that, we would very much be an outlier in college basketball if we were to play Zed and Felix together. I think most people who've followed college basketball know you don't have to. I mean, you could have stopped watching basketball in the early 90s and said, okay, that we would be an outlier. The reality is it's typically a multi-dimensional, versatile guards / wings around a big and maybe a point guard. But I do think eventually, as Zed grows his game, Felix's ability to move at a high level gives us some defensive versatility. So I think it's something we could look at long term. I just think when you're playing against like a Zach Edey, you have to have the ability to. Zed's got to grow his game and he's got to extend it a little bit, and we've got to help him do that.
What about the confidence in Zed's we've talked about his conditioning in the past and changing his body and things like that. It certainly seems like he's made all those improvements, but it seems like this season you would have to take on his biggest kind of minutes load. Do you feel confident in his ability to take a step up in that regard?
Yeah, I think obviously that's an important position for us. So he played, I think, 22, 23 minutes last year, and I think that's going to have to increase. And he and Felix are going to have to man that position. But we could also go to some more versatile lineups if we hit foul trouble with where you have maybe 4 or 5, maybe 5 players out there who are 6'4" or bigger. So there's some lineups that we're looking at right now, but certainly Felix and Zed are going to man those primary 5-man positions.
Do you feel comfortable with Isaac? We saw in the open practice the other day matching up with Zed and kind of playing a 5 in that lineup there. Is that kind of what you're alluding to there with some of those smaller lineups?
Yeah, I don't want to give away any state secrets here, Griffin, but I do think that we'll see some lineups where you have multi-dimensional guys. I think we have looked at how those guys can guard individually, bigger guys. Isaac's a unique, situation because when we recruited him at Oklahoma State, his coaches said, Coach, he's going to be able to guard 1 through 5. Unless you have a towering center in your league, which obviously we have a couple. But outside of those towering presence, he's going to be able to guard 1 through 5. So we've tried to evaluate that. We put him in positions. We've had him go head-to-head against some bigger guys. But again, we're still piecing that together through 11 practices.
Chris, I'm wondering what your thoughts were and are now about the addition of UCLA and USC that came up in the season.
I love adding both of those programs, Mike, UCLA and USC, really for a variety of reasons. One, I think it was inevitable that expansion was going to happen. And I think you're trying to choose schools as a conference that fit the overall profile, which I think they do. You could question the geography of it, but I think, as has been well documented, and you know better than me, that's kind of been thrown out for a number of years. I think they fit in a lot of ways. USC has had a lot of success here. Andy's done a great job. And then UCLA is UCLA, and obviously Mick's been done a tremendous job there. So I love it. Gene called me right before it went down, and I thought it was really good for our league.
Have you ever played at, coached at, or been to Poly?
I've been to Pauley. I practiced there as a college player, and it was a thrill. We were playing in a little tournament out there, and playing in Pauley. When you know the history there, that was practicing in there was phenomenal. We played UCLA, but not out there. So no, this will be my first experience out there.
Do you remember walking out, looking at the banners? Is that a fresh memory for you?
I remember being in the arena. Now I played at Taylor, so any arena would have been jaw-dropping. Okay, but I remember being in the arena and just being amazed at what I was a part of. You know, I really do. It was incredible experience.
Talking about Zed a minute ago, off the court, you've had some interesting guys that you've gotten to coach over the years, personality-wise. None of them had a shirt that said the most interesting man in college basketball, like Zed now has.
He has a shirt?
He has a shirt that says that.
Oh my gosh. I never should have said that. What am I doing?
Well, you're creating NIL opportunities.
Yeah,
right?
I am, I guess.
But like, what is it like coaching a guy like that, having a guy like that in your program? That some of your players have said how, like, if they're having a bad day, Zed always makes it better. And I know, I'm sure there's things on the court that probably weren't done better, but he brings a unique perspective to the game. It looks like.
He really does. I hope he's interested in the cover. I would imagine he is. He's, I would tell you he's a smart kid. He's very thoughtful. He really cares about people. He wants to do well. Now he can be frustrating, no question. Because I want him to do more and be more, and I want him to invest more at times. I think that's normal for coaches and players to have that frustration. But, he's, when I say so much of what we do is we're coaching kids and we're talking about the next step beyond college and the NBA. And while Zed wants to play professionally, he just, if he's got a free 4 or 5 hours, he's going to be at a car dealership trying to swap one of his cars, or he's going to be working on his cars, or he's going to be doing he's got a very much an entrepreneurial spirit. I just think he's interesting. Our operations, David would tell you, he's the one guy that will text him when we send the weekly schedule. He'll make sure he knows exactly what's going on because he wants to plan out his week, where his free time is going to be, so that he can do all the activities that he has.
Would you let him work on your car or hang your TV? I know he's done those things for his teammates.
I'd let him do both. I'd let him do both for sure. I would not ride in his lowrider that he's got right now with him, but I would definitely let Zed fix my car or anything in my house.
Ice is unique too.
Ice is very unique. It's really unique. I don't know. What has it been like getting to know him and to get to just start figuring out some of that personality and how to kind of have that pointed in the direction that you need to? Yeah, I've challenged him. I think he can be a little bit more consistent in his work, but he has just a natural charisma, Adam, that I think you guys will have a chance to see and enjoy. And he's really a competitive kid. He just can't get bored with the daily process of getting better. And I think that's what we challenged him with. But there's a reason why he was voted a captain. He's just got a charisma to him.
So it's 2 captains we know.
Him and Justice.
Yes.
Yeah, we have, our 3 captains are as of now, I think we could add one. And we're looking at adding one, but our 3 captains are Justice Suing, Zed Key, Isaac Likely, and then we could add a 4th one.
I want to ask if I can about Tanner Holden. Comes from Wright State, where he was one of the lead guys there, and it's obvious he's worked really hard on his game to improve to get to this point, but then to come to Ohio State to play a role. Just what's that transition been like? I think everything you've said has been pretty positive about him, but now you're 2 weeks into actual practice with him. Just what are you seeing there?
He's been good, Steve. He's been good, and I think he's even better when the lights come on. I noticed that a little bit in the Bahamas. I think the challenge for a guy like him, Steve, is you become first-team All-League in your league, but he really operates 15 to 18 feet in as an offensive player. And at this level, he's going to have to operate, 22 feet and in. And he's got to expand his game and his ability to, and I think he can do that, but he's got to be able to keep people honest with shooting the ball. His athleticism and his motor allow him to be an impactful player for us. The good thing I'm excited about is we have him for 2 years, and I think we could see his second year be significantly better than his first year, but he's definitely going to help us this year.
Sean McNeil, not a lot's been said about him coming from West Virginia, and I don't know, just your thought. He what we got to see the other day, he hit 1-3 from the top of the key, and hit one from a dead corner. Just seems like he's a guy that can provide maybe some instant offense. If you're in a maybe a small hole, you can put him in there, maybe steal a couple threes or something out of him.
Yeah, he's going to be really important for us. I've said this in the past, shooting becomes a premium when you get to league play because scouting is so good. So you need spacing, you need gravity on the floor. I think he's going to be really, really important for us. And he has the ability to do some things with the ball that I think are really important. So you cannot just smother him on the perimeter because he can drive by, he can finish at the rim. I've been pleased with him. He's a 12-point scorer on a good team, particularly 2 years ago, and we're expecting good production out of him.
Chris, when you think about this season ahead, many teams will come into a season and a team with a lot of experience will say, well, I hope we peak when it matters most. At least from this vantage point, you're in a position where who you will be in November is definitely not who you're going to be by the time February and March rolls around. What's the value of that, knowing that there's as much room as there is to grow?
Yeah, I think that's the exciting the exciting thing. It's also a bit concerning and daunting when you do have some unknowns to start the year, particularly with our schedule. But it's exactly right, John. I think with this group, there's no way that we'll be the same team in November or December that we are in February and March, and we certainly hope that is in a real positive direction. We need to stay healthy, but the trajectory of our 4 freshmen and their play will really determine, I think, in a lot of ways, what we can be in February and March. It just will. Our leadership will be critical, really important. Justice staying healthy, critical, really important. But I think the development, the growth of those 4 guys will say as much as anything about our season.
What's one of those unknowns, if you would point to one that maybe you are a bit more confident in than you were maybe even before, even a month or 2 ago?
I think offensively, I've had some concerns going into the season because we've been so good on that end the last 2 years. I think we're going to be able to score the ball. So I think that would maybe be something I feel a little bit better at. I'm certainly not saying we're going to be the same kind of offensive team we've been the last couple of years, but I think we have some ability there. I would say the thing that still concerns me, and one of the unknowns, is just our ability to rebound the ball at the level we need to.
You talked about Felix a few minutes ago, and you're talking about the freshman. For a guy like him, who we think probably has a little bit of an off-the-court learning curve, what sort of support system do you have to have for a guy like that? How do you try to help him feel acclimated? He's so far from home, hasn't been home for so long, doesn't have anybody around. Like, how do you help someone get situated and feel comfortable with a background like that?
Well, he's really an adaptable kid, for one. He's got a great support system. Felix has an unbelievable support system, and he can really adapt. He really can. So I think for him, he's really adjusted pretty well. I think what we don't know, Adam, is how are these 4 freshmen going to handle, and even a guy like Tanner, or Ice and Sean, but particularly the 4 freshmen, how are they going to handle just not playing well in a particular game and maybe not playing as much as they'd like? What's going to be the response the next day? I think that's what I'm anxious to see, but we have to continue to help them with as they go through it.
And I know everyone has different learning curves, and bigs have different learning curves.
Yeah.
And when you're a big who's also still kind of relatively new to the game,
Yeah.
the potential for growth there compared to even your other talented freshmen. What does that look like for someone who's only a couple years into even playing that?
Yeah, it's really exciting. I think you guys were at the open practice the other day, and you got a chance to see kind of some of the things he did, and the crowd that was there, kind of the oohs and ahs of some of the plays he made. So I think there's going to be moments where you look at it and you're like, whoa, that is impressive. There have been moments for us as coaches, we've been doing this 25 years, where we said, wow, we haven't really had a center that's been able to make those athletic plays. So it's exciting. It's really exciting. Thank you. But there's also moments where he's going to struggle to finish in traffic. He's going to get bumped off a spot, and he's not going to be able to grab a ball because physically he's not there yet. There's those things as well.
Has Justice changed as a player in terms of, have you seen him improve in some areas, regress compared to the player that we last saw at full strength 2 seasons ago?
I think his shooting will need to take another step forward, Griffin. I think we have seen him shoot it well. I think that's the challenge for him is his shooting, but I think he's more than capable of that. What I'm just interested in Justice is him taking more ownership in this group. He didn't really have to 2 years ago because he had Dwayne and CJ there, and EJ was coming into his own, so he could kind of play. And he had Kyle, so he could play a complementary role. Well, now he's going to have to go from a complementary role to perhaps our leading scorer. And I think in a lot of ways, I'm interested to see how he manages that challenge and the responsibility that comes with that.
With this team in particular, you're going to one of the most well-known, if not the most well-known, Peace Week event in Maui. How do you feel about that as it is close to?
Well, it's an incredible event. It's an incredible tournament. Maui Invitationals, as you said, it's one of the most well-known. And I don't know that it's something we'll do necessarily every 4 years, but I do think it's something good to do now. The competition's incredible. The teams out there are phenomenal. We're opening with a team that was second in the country in defense and has most of their team back. They are grown men. But I think the experience will be really good for our group. Our new group, our young group. I think it's going to be really important for them.
Do you have a way to wear Hawaiian themes?
They have sent Hawaiian shirts, John. They have sent Hawaiian shirts. Whether or not they will be worn by the head coach at Ohio State remains to be seen, but they have.
Update to come.
Yeah.
Hey Chris, when you went into the portal to supplement the recruiting class that you had this year, how much did you pay attention to the programs that they were coming from? Oklahoma State's a successful team, right?
Yeah.
That sort of stuff. What is the value of having that prior experience of winning somewhere else?
I think it definitely helps. And the coaching, all three of those guys were really well coached. Obviously, you have a Hall of Famer at West Virginia. Mike does a great job at Oklahoma State. And obviously, Tanner was really well coached. You saw how they played in the NCAA tournament. So I think you do look at that, but it's really positional fit, positional needs. When you're in the position we were in where we had to fill some needs, it's more about how capable the player is. You'd prefer that they play against really good competition, but it's really about the positional fit needs that we have.
For a guy like Tanner and making this jump from low to high major, what does it take for a guy like that to make that jump a successful one?
I mentioned earlier, he's going to have to expand his game a little bit. He played really 17 feet and in, 18 feet and in, made some threes, but he's going to have to expand his game. He's worked on that, and I think that's going to open other aspects of his game. He's got to probably add a bit more physicality to him, but Tanner's been really good for us. It'll be hard for him at times going from the role he played to now more of a at least on this team, it's an important role, but it's not going to be the same role. And I think he knew that coming in.
How much time does that sort of adjustment make? Not just the size and physicality adjustment, but the role adjustment.
I've always sensed the guys in his position, the back half of their first year, and then in his case, he's got another year. You really see him come on. the back half of their first year, a little bit like a freshman, and then that next year.
And then I covered Nebraska. And you happened to catch them during that.
Played great.
Whenever they found it at the end of the year,
They
right?
played great.
So what was different about them when you played them
I think
at the
they
end of the season?
beat us and then went and beat Wisconsin, right?
That's right, and beat Penn State the same week.
At Wisconsin, yeah. I think you know coaches know. I got a text from a really close friend in coaching, and he said, you know, he watched their game versus Penn State and said, I knew you were going to face a really good team that fans probably don't understand how good they are at that time. And we had a lot of respect for them because we played a close game there. But they were, you know, obviously it was no fluke. They beat Penn State worse than anybody had beat Penn State there. They beat us at home, and then they won at a really hard place to win at in Wisconsin, in a big game for Wisconsin, because Wisconsin could have won the league outright at that point.
Chris, what is Roddy going to be to this team?
Excuse me?
What is Roddy Gale going to be?
He's going to be really important. He's 6'4", he's strong, he's physical. I'm excited about Roddy. I think he has as much upside and potential as anyone in that four-man class. And he also has glimpses in practice where you look at him and you're like, okay, he's with continued growth. He's not there yet, but he'll play the two, the other wing spot some, could slide to the point some, but he's gonna provide us a versatile defender, and he's a really good athlete at 6'4", 210, 205.
And then staying along those lines, talking to people around the program, they said when Bruce walked in, you know, Gary said, are you 22 or 23 years old?
Yeah.
You know, like in terms of physically ready freshmen, how many have you seen to his nature in your career?
I don't know if I've seen a point guard as ready as he. You see that with younger guys, right, or with point guards, with smaller kids, but he came from a great program. He's extremely well coached. He's got really good habits right now. He's used to winning, and because of that, I think Bruce is going to be able to help us right away as much as any freshman we've coached.
Got time for one more? With Bruce at open practice the other day, I heard people saying, Bruce, this is your team. This is your team. How much leadership can you put on his shoulders right off the bat? And you say you still might have one more captain. Is he a guy that could you have a freshman captain?
I don't know that I want to put that on a freshman right away. We'll see how that evolves and that goes. I think Gene could be a guy in line for that as well. But I think time will tell with that, Adam. I wouldn't want to put that on a freshman. I think when we're saying it's his team, we want him to run the group that he's with out there at the point guard position. I think ultimately there's so much going on for a freshman, particularly a freshman point guard, that he's probably got enough on his plate. In terms of leadership, he's got to lead while he's out there, and by pure benefit of his position, he is going to be in a leadership role. But I also want him to focus on just, learning as a freshman and growing. Okay, thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Thanks.